So a natural human temptation, I know you all do it, is you size other people up. I saw 10 heads just turned right then. They're like, yep, right now. I don't know if you ever do this, if you go to somebody else's home and you look at their house and you compare it to your own house and you say, well, that was an interesting decision, don't know why you did that. And, you wouldn't say that out loud, but you kind of are thinking it. Priests are weird for lots of reasons. But I do this with churches. So people will say, Father Brian, they just did a renovation at this church, and don't you think it's so beautiful? And I'm like, yeah, no, that's great, beautiful church. Yeah. And I'm, of course, spoiled rotten because Lourdes is perfect. And so when I go to other churches, I'm like, yep, we did that better than you, better than you. And I'll be in purgatory with you. My favorite thing at Lourdes, there's so many great things about this church. But don't you just love our crucifix? I just love our crucifix. It's so beautiful. My biggest pet peeve about any church, probably, there's other ones, but one of the big ones. This church will go nameless, but there's at least one church in our diocese where the crucifix is not in the center. And of course, the tabernacle should always stand at the center of the church. But I also believe that the center of every parish church in the world should be the crucifix. And I don't even know how I would ever preach in a church that didn't have a crucifix at the center. It'd be really hard for me. And today, what I want to invite you into, our readings, if you looked at them ahead of Mass today, our readings want to say to you and I that the cross stands at the center. It's not one aspect of the Christian life. It is not something that could have been otherwise. The cross is the center. And not just of what Jesus did in his life, we'll get to this, but in your life, the cross stands at the center. And all of our readings are about this today. So our first reading in Jeremiah 38, Jerusalem's being sacked. It's about to be captured, and Jeremiah is going to witness those final days, and people don't like Jeremiah because he's been telling them the truth. And because of his prophetic word, he's thrown into a cistern where he literally sinks into the mud. And that was our psalm today. Our psalm is chosen very deliberately to go with our first reading today. Our psalm today is Psalm 40. Psalm 40 says, I waited patiently for the Lord. He inclined to me. He heard my cry. He drew me out from the desolate pit and out of the miry bog. He set my feet upon rock, making my steps secure. Our reading ended today with Jeremiah being pulled out of that cistern. And in the Psalms, it's almost like you can hear Jeremiah crying out here. Lord, I waited for you. And I was sinking in the pit. And you heard my cry, and you set my feet on rock. Now, some of you probably feel that way right now. I know there are some of you right now who you feel like Jeremiah. You're like, Lord, I am sinking in the mud. And I don't know what to do. And I don't know who to turn to. And so, God, hear my cry. I trust in you. Rescue me from the pit. Set my feet on solid rock. And some of you might not feel that way right now. You might feel right now like, you know what, life's pretty good. Right? You guys are about to get married. Right? Sometimes in life we feel like things are great. But today, what our gospel and all of our readings want to tell us is that the center of the Christian life is the cross of Jesus Christ. The gospel today, Jesus says, I have a fire to cast upon the earth, and I am in anguish until it is kindled. Clearly, in our gospel today, Jesus is talking about the crucifixion. He says, I have a baptism with which to be baptized. When Jesus talks about a future baptism in the Gospels, it only happens twice here and then in Mark chapter 10. It's very clear he's talking about the crucifixion. Today, to open this up a little bit more for all of us, what I want to do is really use our second reading. And today, when you finish Mass, go get brunch with your family. Maybe grab some friends from church, go get brunch. And then go read Hebrews chapter 12. And I'd also encourage you, read the chapter before it, read chapter 11. Chapter 11 is a very powerful section of Hebrews, and we're going to talk a little bit about it this morning. But here's what's happening in context in Hebrews. And hear that first line again, chapter 12. The author says, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses. The Greek word for a witness is a martyr. We'll come back to that. Since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of martyrs, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely. Let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross. Here's what's happening in Hebrews. In chapter 10, we're told that whoever is writing to a church where people are suffering intense persecution. And the research I've done on the letter to the Hebrews says that most likely, we don't know for sure, but most likely Hebrews was written to the church at Rome. And there's two possible moments that this suffering could be referring to. One of them was in the year 49 when all the Jewish Christians of Rome were cast out of the city. The other one happens in the early 60s when the Emperor Nero burned Rome to the ground and blamed the Christians. And there was very intense suffering and persecution. So in chapter 10, the letter says, remember, after you were enlightened, that's a word the New Testament uses for baptism. After you were enlightened, you endured a hard struggle with sufferings, sometimes being publicly exposed to abuse and affliction, sometimes being partners with those so treated. You had compassion on prisoners and joyfully accepted the plundering of your property, since you knew that you yourselves had a better possession and an abiding one. Something bad has happened to this church. There's a persecution, there's suffering. And here's what Hebrews is trying to do. The temptation for all of us is to say, when I have a cross in my life, there's a temptation to say, it could have been otherwise. This is just a mistake. It's just a happenstance. It's just a circumstance. And I've got to find my way around it. And by the way, if you do that, that means you're just normal. I do the same thing. When people are mad at me, I'm like, well, you don't understand how great I am. Right? You just don't get it. And I'll charm you and I'll help you to figure out that I'm actually really a nice person. What Hebrews does, it was trying to say to that congregation and to us today that the cross is at the center. And it's not a mistake. The cross is not just something that happened in the past. The crucifixion of Jesus is the center and the paradigm for all of reality. And brothers and sisters, I don't know what's going on in your life right now. Sometimes the cross is something that's happened in your life. Maybe it's an illness. Maybe you've lost a job. Maybe you're going through a hard time with someone you love. But sometimes the cross also just means that I'm supposed to become holy. And I don't want to. Because becoming holy means I have to die to myself. I have to let go of the things that I want. I have to let go of comfort. I have to let go of the easy path. I have to follow Jesus when it's hard. And so the letter to the Hebrews wants to say to us today, your cross is no accident. It's not a mistake. It's not something that you can get around. Brothers and sisters, your cross is your redemption. I know what you're thinking. This is a really cheery homily today. Well, deal with it. That's part of the gospel. In 2 Timothy chapter 3, St. Paul says this. He says, "You have observed my teaching, my conduct, my aim in life. Or you've watched how I live." Paul writes to Timothy, he says, "You've seen how I've walked through this life. You've seen my patience and my love. And you've seen my persecutions, my sufferings, and what befell me at Antioch, Iconium, and at Lystra. What persecutions I endured. Yet from them all the Lord rescued me." Sounds a bit like Psalm 40. Lord, I was sinking in the mud. And I cried out to you and you rescued me. In 2 Timothy 3:12, final verse from Timothy, St. Paul says, "Indeed, all who desire to live a godly life in Christ Jesus will be persecuted." Hear that again. Indeed, all who desire to live a godly life in Christ Jesus will be persecuted. You don't have to be scared of that, though. And I want to leave you two final reasons today. When the cross stands in front of you, when the cross stands at the center of your life as it should, just like it should be at the center of every church. When the cross stands at the center of your life, there are two reasons that you as a Christian can have joy and faith and hope even when you're facing the cross. The first is this. When you go home today, St. Paul begins that section of chapter 12, the beginning of chapter 12 in Hebrews. Sorry, not St. Paul. Somebody else wrote it. Whoever wrote it, they say, we are surrounded by a cloud of witnesses. When I have a cross in my life, you know what encourages me? You. It's people who I love who have also suffered. And they say to me, don't run from the cross, Brian. Don't turn away from Jesus. Don't turn to comfort. All of us have suffered, and we encourage each other. Hebrews here is talking about chapter 11, where it goes through all the martyrs that kind of arise at the end of the Old Testament. And if we had more time to go through this, but we don't have time for that today. So the first thing that encourages us in the shadow of the cross is you are not alone. Every real Christian who loves God will be persecuted in some way, shape, or form. And so when you suffer, brothers and sisters, when the cross feels heavy, you are not alone. God bless you. You're not alone. The second thing is this. One of my favorite lines, Hebrews 12:2, we heard it today. It says, "Let us run the race before us, keeping our eyes fixed on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross." Who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross. The author of Hebrews wants to say to the church, when you've got a cross, when you're suffering, when the world comes at you, don't run from the cross, but keep going full steam ahead. And how did Jesus do it? Much worse than any of us. His cross is 1,000 times, infinitely worse than any of ours, because all of the world's sin was loaded on him. All of it. Jesus today in the gospel says, "I am in anguish until the work of the cross is accomplished." How could he be like that? How could he desire the cross? Well, Hebrews 12:2 says, because he had a joy in front of him. There was something so beautiful in front of the eyes of Christ that he said, yes, I will go through the cross if I can have that joy. What was his joy? Hebrews doesn't tell us. I think it was you. And your salvation, your redemption. And when Jesus was in Gethsemane and the cross hung above him, he had a joy before him, and what he saw, brothers and sisters, was us. If you follow God, you're going to suffer. And to go through that suffering, you can't do it alone. You have to be surrounded by your brothers and sisters, both those who are alive and those who have entered into eternal rest, and you must have a joy before you. So Jesus, may the cross always stand at the center of my life and of all of our lives. Lord, help us not to run from the cross, but to be faithful as you were faithful. Jesus, grant us the communion of the church, to love and support us, to embrace our crosses. And Jesus, may you be our joy.